You want to know something? When you are so good at what you do, like I am, people will deny that you even do it, right? People will deny it. Like, this isn't what you do. And I'm just going to give you an example of this, right? So last year, I did a real life case study of someone who sent me their budget with 22 debts and had $4.10 left over in the beginning. And we were able to do a demonstration about like 1 hour and 30 minutes or so about how this person would had a debt payoff projection about 10 years, same income, same lifestyle, right? And we have people on the internet who denied that I even did this. Okay. You see the words velocity banking right here. Okay. Someone posted on the internet, this is not velocity banking. They're not asking for help for velocity banking. They're actually asking for help with their finances and defining that as velocity banking. It reminded me of a scene in Star Wars where Obi-Wan Kenobi tells the guards, "These are not the droids you're looking for. Move along, move along." But that's what happens when your work is too good. It happens all the time. People try to ignore it and act like it doesn't even exist. They don't even try to dispute it, which is sad. Folks, this is why you constantly have to self-promote because the greatness is undeniable and you got to keep showing it to them. You got to keep showing it to them. That's why I keep making the videos. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're not going to do 22 debts because I don't want to be here for another hour and 30 minutes, but maybe we'll be here for 20 minutes. In fact, on average, you know how fast I am? It takes me about 20 minutes to go over pretty much any debt payoff scenario. Like, that's not the 22 debt one, right? Like, just about 20 minutes. I could pretty much figure out in my head income, expenses, debt, whether you could be helped by these debt payoff strategies or not. Right. And there are different levels to it too. I think a lot of times people say, well, this could help everyone. Right. And there are different tools for different situations. So, for example, let's say you make $10,000 a month, which is really good income, but you have $50,000 a month in debt payments. Then you might need a tool like bankruptcy, which is, it's a legal tool so that you can reset your debts and maybe not have access to the credit system for 7 years or so, but it's a legal tool. Right. But if you don't want to go through all that hassle, maybe there are better ways, okay, to do debt payoff than what we're originally taught. In fact, whatever we're taught, in the beginning is hard for most people, which is why most people struggle with debt. This is why when you go on TikTok.com, everybody's like, I cannot handle debt, like, and they're always making it seem like it's like a big deal to pay off 10, 20, 30 grand. And it is, right? Especially if you've been conditioned to not pay off debt quickly. And that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna tell you the secret to paying off debt. Okay. I know this is gonna sound crazy. The secret to not to paying off debt is not saving money. So you know how Dave Ramsey says like save $1,000? Well, like if you save money, then you're not paying off debt. Okay, so how are you gonna and look at this situation. You get $90 left over. We make good income. $6,000 a month is about $100,000 salary. We make good income. We have a lot of expenses. We have a lot of debt. Can someone tell me if we're applying Dave Ramsey step number one, how we're gonna save $1,000? Seems kind of like hard because you're basically on the edge. There's no room for error. Little margin, right? No room for error. And so what we're going to do is using something called what we now call the velocity method. We used to call it velocity banking, but the state of Illinois told another YouTuber, aka the Kwok brothers, that people will mistake you for a bank for your business, which is debt advisor consulting. And to be honest, I'm not like the biggest fan of them, but you know that's their hustle, right? And so the state of Illinois went to them and sent a cease and desist letter and said, guys, you're not a bank, but you're using the term banking and people could get confused. So we have to fine you $20,000. And so if you look at the Kwok Brothers website, they have no reference to the word banking in pretty much all their videos. They call it HELOC method, HELOC strategy, blah, 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 blah. But I just want to let you know that, which is why we call it the velocity method. And some of you have been emailing me, say, I want to learn this velocity method. So I think we got some new viewers here. Because if you've been here for the past 2 or 3 years, we used to call it the old name, but we can't use the old name anymore because it's like Voldemort. Okay? Like, you don't say that name. I think that's how the Harry Potter universe works. But anyways, let me get back to my point, right? So the way that I was originally taught this is that hey, with the same income and the same expenses, you can pay off debt quickly, right? So let's go ahead and copy the income, the expenses, and look at all this debt, 3 credit cards, an auto loan, a mortgage, and not only that, we got the personal expenses not tied to debt. See, here's what we have to think about differently is that debt is not truly an expense, right? Like there, if you ever learn real estate investing, there's like net operating income and cash flow. And if you want to know the difference between net operating income and cash flow, it's just income minus these expenses that are not tied to debt. Like, so imagine if you're debt free, right? So income minus expenses that you always have to pay for, even if you're debt free. And then so income minus expenses minus debt payments, that's cash flow, right? That's cash flow. If you ever study real estate investing, okay? So this is what we're gonna do. So what is this velocity method? What is this method that sounds super cool? I'm gonna tell you what, it's just not saving money. Okay. That's literally all it is. Like, what's the secret to paying off debt? Don't save money. And I literally saw a video like, or it was a short, like a couple of days ago where one dude was like, if you pay off your debt early, you can't save money. And I'm like, no balls, Sherlock. Like, but a lot of times, people only know what they know because it's about the social conditioning that you receive, not from a bank, because I've never been inside a bank and they never brainwashed me to say you got to save money. But there's several forms of ways to socialize people: advertisements, peer to peer, people reacting, you don't have any savings. Yeah, I don't have any savings, right? And what we're going to do is use a line of credit to help us not save money. Because think about this: out of all the financial tools available, the line of credit is the only one where I can dump my entire paycheck in and freely pull money out, right? Like, think about even a credit card. If I put my entire paycheck into a credit card and I have other debts and I have, I got loans, I can't use a credit card to pay all of these, right? Or it's very hard. Like, if you ever used a website, plastique.com, for the most part, it doesn't work with the major card issuers like Amex or Visa. Maybe Mastercard card or Discover might work. It will probably work because I've used it before with those card issuers. But it's a little bit restrictive, and this is why a lot of people have trouble overpaying credit cards, right? So this is why we talk about lines of credit using as our main operating account, because we dump the entire paycheck into the line of credit, we can immediately take it out. And that's the ultimate flexibility that allows us to overpay debt. A lot of people don't emphasize this, right? In fact, I hear a lot of wrong explanations about why we use a line of credit. This is why people make mistakes like dumping their entire, let's say, 2.875% mortgage on an 8% line of credit. Okay? Like, you don't want to make that mistake. But anyways, let's assume we have access to an $80,000 home equity line of credit. So if you don't know what a line of credit is, basically a financial tool where you can borrow money, pay back, and use it over and over again. So the way I like to describe it is that you can go to the bank's website, click a button, and they'll dump cash into your checking account in an instant, right? And they'll charge 8% interest rate or annual interest rate. And so the way that we're going to increase our cash flow is that we are going to move some debt strategically and then just magically increase it, right? And so if you've never heard of the cash flow index, a relatively simple formula, right? It's basically the balance of your debt divided by the monthly payment. And you do that with all your debts, right? So this is kind of like the first measure of ranking your debts, which ones to pay off. And so if you have this very large number, why do we pay this large number off last? It's because you literally have to give the mortgage company $235,000 only for $1,100 of cash flow, right? So if we pay off these two credit cards, which is $57,000, that's literally almost $2,000 of cash flow compared to this measly $1,100, right? A measly $1,100. This is why we got to pay off the lower ones first. And the lower the number, that means more bang for our buck in terms of cash flow. And so if you want to see what I mean, let's just sum up the credit card debt. So it's 72,000, okay? So now let's move that 72,000 into the credit limit. And guess what happens here, okay? This is going to be the most amazing moment of your life that you will see, you'll stare at, and you won't believe, because you're watching a guy named Korean Atlanta Mentorship, and you have no idea, like, why is this the only guy who's talked about this like this? Why like, that's probably what you're thinking. It's kinda like, that old Arsenio Hall joke in the '80s, when, he was in Ghost. I don't know if you remember that. I don't think we could say it because it's politically not correct anymore. But, yeah, you're probably thinking that, like, "Why is this the only guy I've seen explain it like this?" And it blew my mind. This is why I've been getting emails for the past couple of days where, like, "Can you teach me this?" Or, can you apply it to my situation?" So I asked for, just a small sum of money, even though, I don't need it, and the reason I do that is because people who pay attention. Anyways, alright, so let's go ahead and do this. So, we move the credit card debt, okay? We move the credit card debt, and then guess what happens here? 0, 0, 0. These credit card payments go away because you just did debt transfer. Now, when these credit card payments go away, doesn't this $90 turn into $2,482.76, even though our income is the same? Yeah, I know. You stare at that. Like, you're like, what? I've had people where I showed this to in real life, and they just didn't want to like accept it emotionally because it just doesn't make any sense. How does $90 turn into $2,482.76? Now, if you kind of think about it, it almost shows you, or it actually does show you, that the bank has been stealing a lot of your life force and potential, right? Because here you are on the brink and you make good income. $6,000 a month is a good income. All you do is just transfer some debt into a line of credit, and then it's like, this is like, you know, it would have taken me forever to get from 90 to here if I were to actually save money or follow Dave Ramsey's rule number one, save $1,000, right? Like who does that? Who does that? And so now the final step of this is you're going to put your entire paycheck into the line, take your expenses out because we're going to treat our line of credit as our main operating account. And then our cash flow here is the amount of money that our line of credit decreases by approximately every single month with some interest, right? Because we're going to pay money to use that line of credit, but as long as we use it as our main operating account, it should be fine, right? Now, here is the $1 million question, as we like to say, is if you are $90 left over because you have all this debt, will the bank give you a free and clear line of credit, right? So free and clear line of credit. We saw that we start with an $80,000 free and clear line of credit. The answer to that is no, because banks don't lend money to people who need it. Now you might be asking, like, if that's true, why did you start with a free and clear line of credit? Simply because I don't want to be here for an hour and 30 minutes. So if you want to see a real life case scenario where I actually started off with a maxed out line of credit, let's see if we can find it somewhere here. Yeah, right. Yeah. Maxed out line of credit, $4.10 left over. I don't know if you could see that well, but man, that was why I was there for 1 hour and 30 minutes. But here's the thing. If you see this even with the free and clear line of credit, even though it's not realistic, you'll be thinking, man, having this line of credit would have been a lifesaver if I just knew the strategy from the beginning. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize, right? When we talk about free and clear lines of credit. It's not realistic because banks don't lend money to people who need it, but do it right from the beginning, right? A lot of people get shocked when they hear banks don't lend money to people who need it. It's because the bank lies through you through its advertisements, right? Like how many times have you watched a banking commercial about, we'll be there for you when you need us, and then it turns out they won't be there. But the reason that they probably have to lie to people is because if most people found out how they worked, they probably get really, really pissed and do something about it. But who knows? We live in a very apathetic society nowadays. All right. So next step is you put your entire $6,000 into the line of credit as an overpayment. And it doesn't matter if you get paid weekly, bi-weekly, whatever. People make such a big deal about it. It doesn't matter. You take your expenses out, you rinse and repeat over and over again. And I'm going to show you how the next balance works, which is based on the previous month's balance, previous month's interest, minus our cash flow. So 2482.76, 2482.76. And then how do we calculate the interest? It's based on the average daily balance multiply by the interest rate, and then divide by 12. And then we're going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then we see that in month 33, okay, 33, it's been paid off, right? 33. That's it. 33 months to pay off 72K. Okay, so 33 months to pay off 72K. So let me just show this right here. We paid off these 3 credit cards. And then now we just have 2 more loans. And look at that. Right now it's the 15-minute mark. So I think I got 5 more minutes to do this. But you know what? I like blabbing on and on. It feels really good. Okay. All right. So now we have the loan calculator here, and we just put the current months to see the current balances of the auto loan and the mortgage. And I'm going to tell you something, how the average person thinks. They see that 4% loan and say, I got to focus on that because it's all about that high interest rate. And we're going to still use a cash flow index. In fact, in this scenario, we're just going to pay the 3% loan. You might say, why is that? Cash flow index says I'm going to get the most bang for my buck for paying off this loan right now, right? Pay 10 grand, get 400, and then we could apply the 400 to the mortgage. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So let's move this 10 grand into the line of credit and do this right here. Okay, plus 10308.69. And then, all right, so if I do that, then guess what happens? Auto loan payment goes away because it's a debt transfer. And now our cash flow is $2,878.07. In fact, if you just actually go back to the line of credit, you'll see that this number is here. That's because I did it in the previous demonstration. But let's go ahead and do it now. Re-update the line of credit again. Copy and paste. And then we see that in month 36, the auto loan is paid off, right? So look how little interest that you pay, even though we're moving this 3% loan into an 8% line of credit, right? Because interest is not just about the interest rate. It's also about time and volume. I think they need a physics equation for that. All right, so 36 months. And I'm just going to do this. All right, so 72. So 36 months, 72 plus 22, that's going to be 94K. Okay. And then now it's a 30-year mortgage. So in 36 months, 36. All right. So this is going to be 222,000. Now, here's the thing that I want you to be aware of. Don't fall into the dogma, all loans bad, lines of credit good. Because a lot of people fall into that. And then what they'll do is they'll replace this mortgage that's 4% with, let's say, an 8 to 10% line of credit. First, they call that a first lien HELOC. Now, I'm going to tell you why that you shouldn't do that, right? So why is it that we could have replaced this 3% loan with an 8% line of credit? Well, it's because you get a relatively good amount of cash flow for that small balance, well, at least at the time of the loan, right? And what happens with people is they think that applies to all loans, right? But you take a look here, we have a high cash flow index. What does that high cash flow index mean? That means you have a lot of loan and itty bitty amount of payment, right? So why did the car loan work is because you had little loan and kind of relatively big payment. So you got a lot of cash flow for moving the debt, even though it was 8%. Where in this case, you have big loan going from 4 to 8, and you have little bit of cash flow to offset that, which probably means and it's not probably, I know this for sure because we've done the calculation a million times, that you're going to end up paying more than you have to. So there's really only 2 ways to pay it off. And both of them, you know what they include? Not saving money. Right? Not saving money. So the first way that we cannot save money is doing extra payments. So what is extra payments? It's you make the monthly mortgage payment, and then whatever is left over in your checking account, you just put it as an overpayment. Now, I'm going to tell you something is that most people have trouble overpaying loans and credit cards. Why? When you overpay a loan or a credit card, it's really hard to move that money if you need it in other places, right? So if you need to, let's say you'll pay credit card 1 and then you have credit card 2 and 3, what do you do in that scenario, right? Like you're kind of screwed. Now, the reason why we talk about lines of credit is because the line of credit is the only tool where you can overpay it and you have no issues, right? Personal, home equity, Um, Amex Business is technically a line of credit, but it's a weird line of credit where it's like get as many unlimited loans as you want. So I don't know if I would recommend that for this, but my point is this, right? Most people have problems overpaying loans because there's a inherent inflexibility in the product because it's a one-way street, right? And so what happens is that when people try to overpay loans, it's kind of like going to the gym in New Year's. Like, you ever have people, friends say, "Hey, let's go to a gym in New Year's because, it's gonna be the cheapest." And there's a reason why it's the cheapest then, because nobody goes, right? And certain, options are very, very cheap because it's hard to do certain things. And here's what the interest rate of a loan represents. Okay. Number one, your risk as a borrower, right? So we're not taking that into account right now. But also number two, the amount of ease of access to your money. So why will a line of credit always have a higher interest rate than a loan, like 95% of the time? Or I'll say 97. It's because they have to charge you more for the ease of access to your money. Okay. You understand that? So why don't we use the higher interest rate tool, which allows us easy access to our money to pay off the loan? Instead of dumping the whole loan into the line of credit, what if I said that, hey, if we just partially move the loan into the line of credit, that the interest rate does affect it, but not as much as you think it would, right? And the reason why this is so easy to execute is because we don't have to do that much thinking, right? And a lot of people discount the power of not thinking, okay? Because all you think about is your checking going to zero and your line of credit going to zero, and that's it. Whereas when you're overpaying a loan and sometimes in your credit card, you kind of fear overpaying that because it's like, well, how much should I put in this? Because if I put in too much, this might be a little bit difficult when it comes to moving money from in my bank accounts, right? That's why nobody does it because they're of the inherent inflexibility of loans and credit cards. That's why we said talk about line of credit. Okay. All right. So now let me just kind of show you how this works. Call it sweeping. Okay. So let's say we take a piece of the loan, right? Take a piece of the loan. Where is it? Of this 222,000, we'll take 6,000 out and move it into the line of credit. Okay, so let's just move the 6,000 here. Now remember, the cash flow never increases until for a loan until it's like finally paid off, right? So just remember that. So you'll see the same cash flow here. We haven't increased it. All we did is move the loan to the line of credit. And then guess what happens here, right? So the 6,000 that we put into the loan, it got paid off in like 2 months. We're still making the monthly payment. In fact, we just, auto withdraw it from the line of credit, schedule a payment, whenever it's due. And then we see that in 2 months it gets paid off, and another 2 months gets paid off, and so on and so forth, right? And so we just see it's relatively easy. We're just paying it off and cycling over and over again. Even though we're using an 8% line of credit, not a big deal. In fact, let me just kind of show you here, right? So 8,000, I'm sorry, not 8,000, 8%. Let me just make sure I have the correct numbers. So let me go up here and do 6,000 income, 2,000 expenses. So in this little calculator here, we just put the expenses, everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. And let me just verify the balance. So 222,072.01. So 222, where is it? 222,072.01. Yeah, there we are. So again, we're going to sweep a small amount from the loan into the line of credit and repeatedly pay it off over and over again. And then let's say, this is 8%, right? So you see that the interest is 25 grand. We paid in 5.3 years. Now, let me kind of show you something crazy that really made me not fear interest rates as much as I should. But if we turn this to 15, look how much more interest we pay. It's like literally like 1 or 2 grand more. And so, a lot of times people fear like going from 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. We literally went from 8 to 15. And it almost made like a negligible difference. Do you think the bank cares if you paid like 25 grand to 27 grand of interest? It's like just a blip on their balance sheet, right? It's just like a rounding error, you know? Like, like it's like, oh my goodness. But here's the other thing, right? So remember this too, 30%. So 30% is like 31 grand. Okay. But if you move the entire loan, we'll say this one, into a line of credit, you see how you even pay more than the 30%? And that's why I say, hey, don't move that loan into a line of credit, especially if there's an interest rate difference. But a lot of people keep promoting that the loan is bad. I'm not saying that the loan is bad, okay? But out of all the debts that you pay, you have to prioritize the loan last or the mortgage last because of that cash flow index number. What does that mean? You pay big money for itty bitty amount of cash flow. Some people might consider that to be a good thing, so you don't pay it off early. But I consider that to be a bad thing, but we have to pay it off in the right order. And why do I consider it to be a bad thing? Is because, if you just let the minimum payment go on for 30 years, you're going to pay 50 to probably 200% interest, right? A lot of people have never, like, your average person is so far behind that they don't understand that a 30-year mortgage is really just a 50 to 200% loan. Right? Like, they don't understand that. Anyways, all right, so let me just kind of go back here, $6,000, and then, we'll pay it off in 5.3 years, right? All right. Anyways, so let me go back here, which is 0, and this would be 36 divided by 12 plus 5.3, and then that's 8.3 years, and then we are debt free. And then, yeah. And so, it's 26 minutes right now. And I don't know any other person who could just blab on and on and on and go from start to finish in about 26 minutes. But, I'm the greatest. Isn't that like the quote from Muhammad Ali? I'm the greatest. And then, this is my quote. People will even deny what you've done. I kind of feel like Thanos saying that. I don't know why. Did he say something like you deny me? No. He just want to snap his fingers and half the world would disappear. Right. It's funny how Marvel has just dropped off the face of the planet and kind of as like a Hail Mary. They needed to get RDJ back as Doctor Doom. Yeah, he's like, hey, where'd he come from? Like, weren't you Iron Man? I was like, no, well, he's Doctor Doom now. Anyways, I'm actually kind of curious to see that movie because it's like, it is such a Hail Mary move that it makes you curious if they're really going to pull it off, you know? But, anyways, let me just kind of show you here that yes, people do deny my greatness. That's why I have to keep making videos. So eventually my name goes out to the YouTube algorithm. Heck, I might have to even use paid ads. You know what I mean? Like, the YouTube game is kind of probably rigged so that you have to use paid ads to promote your videos nowadays. Even Mr. Beast's views are going down 50%, right? Okay, well, we're almost at the 30-minute mark, so that's it for today, folks. Almost into Memorial Day. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.